Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today's topic is college savings and education funding strategies for 2025. It's all about helping families prepare for rising education costs going forward. So today we have Eric Stiles, who's going to guide us through everything.
Hey everyone, my name's Eric Stiles, and I'm a certified financial planner here at Malecki Finance Group. I like to specialize in helping people retire early and enjoy their years of retirement. But today we're focusing on a different topic. We're going to focus in on college savings and give you some tips and tricks and how to deal with this very important decision in your life.
Okay, cool. So just really quickly, what we're going over today is we're going to start with an overview of just college savings accounts, focusing on the differences between 529 plans and UTMA accounts. Then we're going to talk about tax incentives, covering federal and state benefits, plus any relevant education credits and how that might impact financial aid. From there, of course, we can't talk about funding without talking about scholarships, as well as investing, savings plans, et cetera, et cetera. So Eric's got it from here.
All right, perfect. All right, so let's just get right into the basics, the essentials. Everyone I'm sure on here is, or at least I'd hope has heard of what a 529 plan is. A 529 college savings plan is a tax advantage vehicle to save, initially it's for college, but now it's for a number of different educational reasons. It can now also be used for K through 12 expenses up to certain limits. And it's not just for your standard college and university. There's a number of trade schools and different educational paths that you could also qualify for. Some of the key benefits of a 529 plan, well, first off, probably the most important one is tax deferred and potentially tax-free growth of the plans. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Also, there's generally very high contribution limits for this. There's generally not an annual limit, but there is a lifetime limit that varies state by state. And then depending on the state you live in, and I guess to take a step back, each state has their own 529 plan that they run. But just because you live in one state doesn't mean you have to do your own state's 529 plan. You can do any state you like. And just because you do one state's 529 plan doesn't mean that it only works for colleges and universities in that state. So it's just, how it's ran and how it's set up. But each state, if you do your own state's 529 plan, you potentially may be eligible for different tax benefits, incentives, scholarships if you do your own state's plan. But that's, of course, a case-by-case basis.
Very cool. Thank you, Eric. So for this next one, we've covered the basics of 529 plans, but what about the other types of accounts that are out there?
So generally, there's in our business the two most popular types of accounts that parents, grandparents, loved ones would open up for minors are either 529 college savings plans or UTMAs, or sometimes called UGMA, depending on the state. A UTMA is just kind of your open-end investment vehicle where you or whoever gets assigned as the custodian manages the assets until the minors reach age and majority. Now, age of majority depends on the state. It could be 21, it could be 18, but that depends on the state. But really, UTMAs are a lot less restrictive than 529 plans, where you're going to have some more investment options to choose from. It doesn't have to be used for educational costs. It can be, it of course can be, but it doesn't have to be. But one of the negatives of it being a little more flexible is you don't really get as much potential tax benefits as you would in a 529 plan. There are some, but generally it's pretty minor, and it wouldn't be the reason why you invest in UTMAs because of the potential benefits. It's more for the flexibility.
Of course, I have to ask you to compare the two. What makes them the same and what makes them different across a bunch of different variables? Makes it a
So
little easier, right?
of course. So yeah, I've explained a little bit of the differences, but this chart makes it very simple, very straightforward. We're going to have on the left some of the key things to consider and kind of how each differentiate. So the purpose, the main reason why you're going to invest in a 529 plan is to fund and to save for educational expenses. That is the main reason why you're doing it. And but in UTMA, like I mentioned, it can be used for a variety of different things. But the main general rule of thumb for a custodian, when you're in charge of an UTMA, you're managing the assets for the minor until they reach age of majority. The purpose is to save and invest the UTMA for the benefit of the minor. So you can, for an UTMA, you can use the assets for a number of different things, but it just has to be for the benefit of the minor. So that could be the first car, that could be college, that could be books for school, that could be a computer for school, that could be a variety of different things. And then we kind of touched on the tax benefits. We touched on the tax benefit differences between a 529 plan and an UTMA. You are going to have greater potential tax benefits in a 529 plan because it can be tax-free growth if it's used for qualified educational expenses. Where in UTMA, you may be able to have a portion that is taxed at a lower, the minor's rate, generally lower tax rate, but you're not going to have as good of tax benefits as you do with a 529 plan. But UTMA might not have the benefits of the additional tax benefits, but they do have a leg up on the investment selection. Within an UTMA, you have a wide range of options you can choose from. Whereas a 529 plan, each state's 529 plan, you have a pre-select amount of options. They're kind of like mutual funds that you can choose from. Where in UTMA, there's really very minimal limit to what you can choose out there in the industry. And so you do have a much greater, from the investment standpoint, flexibility in an UTMA. Now, this is a big one that a lot of parents ask, and that's, how's this going to impact my financial aid? When we get to college and we're doing the FAFSA, how's this going to impact my financial aid? Well, a 529 plan is considered an asset of the parent or of the grandparent. It is not considered an asset of the minor. So it should have a lower impact on your chances of getting financial aid through FAFSA than that of an UTMA, because an UTMA is considered an asset of the minor. You are just a custodian helping manage the account until the minor reaches age of majority. But it is the minor's asset. So you will have a greater impact on the chances for financial aid. And kind of, these kind of, all blend together, but, with an UTMA being the asset of the minor, you as the adult, you are going to generally have less control over these assets long term than you do in a 529 plan. Because when a UTMA is set up, and depending on the state, some states the age of majority is 21. I think the majority are 21, but there are some states that the age of majority is 18. If you open an UTMA for a minor, and let's say it's in New Jersey, once they reach 21, you no longer, as a custodian, have authority and have control. You need to hand over that authority, hand over that control to the minor. Now, for some parents, for some grandparents, that gives them some concern. What, I'm about to hand over all these assets to someone who's just 21, probably still in their senior year of college and isn't mature enough and to handle that money. And that is a potential concern with UTMA, is that once they hit age majority, you have no control anymore. Whereas a 529 plan, being an asset of the adult, it's your asset. You control it at all times. And so there's no age limit where you have to hand over control. It's your asset. And contribution limits, essentially both of them are essentially the same. There are no contribution limits with UMA. You do have to worry about gift tax limits. With a 529 plan, there are lifetime contribution limits, but they're very, very high. And you also need to worry about the gift tax limits as well. But generally, these are both areas that they are pretty much similar. So what's best for who? So for families what's really important to them is having their kids either not graduate with a bunch of loans or not graduate with any loans. A 529 plan is right up your wheelhouse. And if the intention is for your kids to go to college, you want to start saving early in that. An UTMA is for the parents that are seeking flexibility. There are parents that I'm not fully sure if my kids are going to go to college or not, but I do know I want to save for their future, or I do know I'm gonna have to buy their first car for them. I do know every year that I'm gonna have to do back to school shopping for them. I do know that there's different steps in their life that I'm gonna have to save for. That's where an UMA gives you the flexibility, and also because you also can use it for college. It's just you're not going to receive the tax benefits like you do for a 529 plan.
So you've mentioned it a couple of times. I'm gonna pry a little bit more about those tax benefits and how that really works.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, what I'll kind of start with is I kind of want to use New Jersey, state of New Jersey as an example. So the state of New Jersey offers three potential state tax deductions and credits. I know I'm going a little bit out of order on the slide, but uh, the state of New Jersey, for example, offers a potential for a grant, a one-time kind of grant bonus on your initial contribution. They offer the potential for a New Jersey state tax deduction, and they offer potential for a scholarship if you go to a select approved New Jersey school. And that depends on how much you add over the time. That depends on how long the 529 plan is open. And then the first two I mentioned, the grant and the state tax deduction, there are you do get excluded out of it depending on your income level. So, but that's just an example of New Jersey. But every state has their own different setup. Some states, unfortunately, don't offer any benefits. Some states offer more benefits. It all depends on your situation, and it's really important that when you're considering a 529 plan, in your consideration should always be your state's plan. That's probably at least assess that. Yeah, I always recommend assessing reviewing multiple plans and deciding between which one's best for you, but at least one of them should be your state's plan to see like, can I qualify for any of these benefits? And as far as I know, I've mentioned a ton as far as the tax-free growth and the withdrawals, but as far as what's considered a qualified education expense, I'll kind of just mention that. You see it here: tuition, fees, books, but doesn't just stop there. You also have room and board. And room and board can also, if your child, let's say in their junior and senior year, they decide they want to live off campus, that can be considered a qualified education expense as well. And it's not just doing room and board on the dorms and apartments that are campus housing. And another big one that is considered qualified education expense is a laptop for school. That is one that's considered a qualified education expense as well. So that's only a few of the options. There is actually a long list, and if you have a specific question about something pertaining to you, talk to your advisor. But it's really a 529 plan. It's such a powerful tool. It's such a powerful tool of having tax deferred growth and then also potentially tax free. Like you don't pay any taxes on the growth. And so it's such a huge tool that every parent should consider.
So I'm gonna ask you about something that I did not know about before researching for today. Those financial aid implications. How does that work?
Yeah, so when you apply for FAFSA, they essentially, try to generate a number that they believe based on your parent situation, based on the assets in the kid, that you would be able to fund. And then they try to see if that's not enough to cover expenses, then potentially you could get qualified for financial aid. So like I mentioned earlier, if financial aid is really important to you, an UTMA is a vehicle that there's going to be some concern about you getting eligible for financial aid. If you have a 529 plan, which I think I'm going to mention in an additional slide, there are some different tips and techniques that you can use to help minimize the impact on financial aid. So, everyone, of course, hopes to get financial aid, and you want to be really considerate about which option you choose when you're picking your plans. And of course, you can always do both plans. You don't have to do a 529 plan or an UMA. You can always do both, but just know what goes into UMA is going to have a much greater impact on your financial aid ability.
Yeah, so here are those strategies about how to minimize that impact.
Okay, perfect. So I want to talk about 529 plans. Now, like I mentioned, it's a parental asset. So it's not the asset of the minor, asset of the student. It's going to have less impact initially on your FAFSA. But when you do use your 529 plan assets to cover expenses, that could impact future years eligibility of getting financial aid. Generally, there's a 2-year look back when FAFSA and colleges are assessing whether or not we should give aid to the student. So sometimes what we recommend, if a parent does not have enough saved in 529 plan to cover all 4 years of college, maybe let's say they only have enough to cover 2 years of college. Well, a potential strategy may be to use the 529 plans in your junior and senior year, and then either pay out of pocket or take out loans in your freshman and sophomore year. The reason being is that if you use 529 plan assets in your freshman year, flash forward 2 years from then when you're applying for your junior year, the financial aid offices are going to look back and see, oh, during the freshman year, they were able to fund from a 529 plan. So that's a lower amount we need to help them with financial aid. So that is a potential thing to consider, is that if you do not have enough to cover for all 4 years, focus on funding the back years prior to doing it up front. So that's a really big way of like timing your withdrawals and looking into that. Another one to consider, I mentioned UTMAs have a huge hit because it's considered a student asset. Well, leading up to those college years, if you're starting to let's say you already have an UTMA open, can't change what you had in the past. You could consider converting and transferring those UTMA assets into a 529 plan. There are some stipulations, there are some considerations to think over. It is a little bit more of a advanced technique, so you would definitely want to consult with your tax advisor and also your financial advisor, but that is another strategy you can help potentially do to help with your financial aid application.
But then this is all about college funding in general. So what about scholarships?
Scholarships are definitely something that I feel like even in my own time I didn't look into enough. And I know there's a wide range of scholarships out there. Everyone here can have, go to your kid's guidance counselor. I'm sure there's a long list of scholarships that they can apply for. Now, granted, they may be low amounts, but if you start getting a number of them, that all adds up, and that really, really can help. But to talk about what the different types of scholarships, let's first start with merit-based versus needs-based. Well, merit-based, pretty straightforward. It's based on the talents and of the child, whether it be because they're top of their class, super smart, or maybe there's athletic scholarships out there, or artistic and other talents. So merit's based on the talents of the child, where needs-based scholarships are they're not fully financial aid. Well, they're kind of in the financial aid realm, where it's based on the financial needs determined based on the income and the situation of the specific family. And these scholarships could be from private corporations or private companies or private areas, or they could be public. They could be from federal or state institutions. And so, what I really just recommend is talk to the guidance office at your child's school, because they should have a list of a wide range of scholarships that your child could look into applying for, and it doesn't hurt to apply. It's, yeah, you may not get it. Yes, it may not be a scholarship big enough to pay for 1 year of school, but every dollar helps in the goal of saving for college and getting your children set up in a stronger position graduating from college with less student debt, or hopefully no student debt at all.
So for families that are about to send a kid off to college, what would that funding plan look like? How could they even get started?
Well, first you got to assess your current situation. How old is your child? How many years do we have to college if this is going to be primarily for college? I'm gonna make the assumption that right now what we're talking about is saving for college. Like I mentioned earlier, you can use 529 plans for like private high school, middle school, and other needs, but I'm just gonna more talk for college. So first, you have to evaluate, how much do I currently have saved? How many years do we have to go from there? Based on that, what am I projecting for how many assets, how big will that stockpile be come college time? So you always want to assess your current path first. And then with that, you think about, you know, what, what's my intentions? Do I want to have my son or daughter graduating with no debt? Do I want to at least, pay for half the years? Or do I just want to do the best I can within my budget and, whatever happens, happens? Because if you have a specific goal in mind, like, oh, I want to pay for all 4 years, from there, you compare it. Okay, I want to pay for all 4 years, but what is my current path doing? Is my current path on track for that? If yes, perfect. Keep doing what you're doing. If not, that's where you need to, determine through your cash flow, first off, how much more savings either a month or a year is needed to get to that goal. And then from there, determine can I achieve that additional savings? Or is that additional savings going to stress my budget too much? Because I know saving for college is very important for a lot of parents, but you also got to realize you have other financial goals like retirement and like other needs. So it's definitely it's a balancing act to figure out if you can't save for all of them perfectly, how do I choose how much to fund each? And so that's something you can work with a financial advisor to discuss those specific situations.
So another thing you should probably talk to your advisor about, but I'm going to ask you to talk about anyway, is investment strategies, especially in the realm of education funding.
Perfect. So I love the first bullet. Start early. You got to start as early as possible because you want to have as many years of you as you can compounding interest on your investments. You know, I mean, maybe not as extreme as on the way from home from the hospital, set up a 5-time plan, but pretty soon after then, you should think about, saving pretty soon for that. But then from there, when you're picking on your investments, we need to consider what is your risk tolerance? What's your tolerance to risk? And then compare that to how many years do we have until we start need to funding that goal? Because, you know, we need if you're very far away from the college age, we want to be more aggressive. The more closer you get, the more conservative you want to be. So it's a balancing act that you work with your financial advisor because there are some people that are more on the conservative side, and we need to figure out what's a good middle ground between what I think you should be at based on how many years we have and what you're comfortable with. And then the same thing goes the opposite end. There are people that are very aggressive, and it's a balancing act between as we get closer to that college age time, making sure they are somewhere where they're not too aggressive that we be uncomfortable with the fact that we're about to start to liquidating this fund because that's the thing about college expenses. Different than retirement, both of them you're saving for a date, but retirement you're potentially saving for 20 to 30 years of payout, whereas for college you're generally saving for 4 years of payout that at the end of 4 years there's going to be nothing left in the account. So it's definitely a little bit of more of a setup, and you do need to be a little more conservative than you do with your retirement funds as you get towards that, that turnover date from into college age or versus into retirement. But one of the big you see here, age-based strategies. This is a potentially a really just simple, easy way for parents and grandparents to save for their kids' education. Age-based portfolios, like in the name, they will invest based on the company's determination of how much risk you should be taking based on how old the child is and how many years they have to get to 18, 19, college age. So if it's a 0 to 4 age-based portfolio, it's going to be a lot more aggressive than a 15 to 16 portfolio. But one of the things that's nice about age-based strategy is that you really don't have to do what's nice about age-based strategy is it's lower maintenance than building a custom portfolio because you could set and forget it, and this age-based portfolio will automatically make the strategy and make the assets safer and safer and safer as that child gets older. So it is much more of a set and forget it, simple strategy. And then of course, you should be reviewing your assets, reviewing your accounts because just because an investment when you started it, the team's done great, the managers have a great track record, and they've been doing very well. Well, that doesn't mean it's going to be what's going to happen in the future. Past results are no guarantee of future returns. And so that's where you want to review periodically. You want to stay on top of how your assets are allocated and making sure it's still at a suitable level. So obviously a lot, but for a lot of people, they tend to lean on their financial advisor to guide them through this slide.
So, can you tell us about more of how a financial advisor can actually help with this whole process?
Yeah, so it's instead of you doing by yourself, we're here, we're holding your hand and we're taking care of you. What I kind of mentioned earlier, as far as what you should do, is what we do here. First, we assess your current situation. Much do you have saved? How much are you saving every month? Then we determine what is your goal. It's hard for us to build a personalized strategy for you if you don't know what we're shooting for. If we don't know, are we trying to get pay for all 4 years? Are we trying to pay for all four plus grad school? Are we trying to save for 2 years? And then from there, we assess your current situation. If we're off track, we then determine, okay, we might be off track right now. We're currently trending for this amount to be funded, but all we need to do is just fund X amount, this X amount more. And so that's where our advice is fully personalized to your specific situation, and it's not a cookie cutter blanket rule. If you save X amount a month for retirement, I mean for college, you'll be able to fund it. Because also the other thing you need to consider is what university are we going to? Because that could be very, very different. Let's say you're a Notre Dame, you as parents, you're both Notre Dame alumni. You would really love to have your child go Notre Dame. That is a much different savings plan that you're going to have to build versus if you're going to a state school, in-state school. And so that's the other thing to consider is there a specific level of college you're hoping to save for? Now, majority of parents don't have a specific school they're looking to save for, but we'll more say, do you want us to be able to save for any school? So like we plan for Notre Dame level, we plan for most expensive level, or do you want to just save for like state school level? And if they end up going to a private school or out of state school and it's not enough, then that's fine. You'll cover it through your expenses or you'll take out a loan. So, that's one thing, we get very personalized with you. And from there, I'm sure I mentioned a lot earlier about the tax benefits and financial aid and tax incentives and potential scholarships. And I'm sure a lot of that went in one year and out the other. But where we come in is we help analyze all that for you, so you don't have to. That's basically what it all comes down to. Working with financial advisor is so you don't have to. That's where we're experts. It's what we do every day, and you come to us so that it's being taken care of in a professional manner, and you can worry about your other things in life because a lot of people's lives are very busy. And of course, you see in the bottom, we talked about on the previous slide, but you have to do ongoing review. You have to meet, uh, because let's say, let's say, down the road, it looks like our child is not going to go to college, but their younger sibling will. It's like, we could talk about how we factor that, how we transition that, but that's obviously it's case by case basis, and that's how we figure it out by meeting with you.
So, before we wrap up, this is the bulk of the content being done, but if you have any questions, there should be a little Q&A box down below. Feel free to send something. We'll do our best to answer it. Eric will do his best to answer it. And we'll make sure that if you have any super, super detailed questions, set up a meeting with your advisor. We are always available to talk and figure out what works best for you.
And when questions maybe are coming in, I do want to talk about one other thing that wasn't on the slides that is a very powerful potential tool with 529 plans. So something that I've talked about with clients, it's a concern is, well, I like the tax benefits of a 529 plan, but what happens if my child gets a full ride to school or they don't end up going to school? Like there's some concern there because if you liquidate a 529 plan and it's not for qualified education expenses, the growth within the 529 plan is exposed to current level income taxes and a 10% penalty. So I get asked that a lot, like, well, what do I do? Like I'm leaning towards an up because then I avoid that potential concern. Well, one of the newer features of 529 plan that came through over the past few years is the ability that you can roll over a portion of 529 plans that weren't used for qualified education expenses into a Roth IRA for that minor. And there are stipulations. There is a lifetime maximum currently of how much you can move over, so it's not unlimited. But now that gives parents a little bit more of, a confidence that in choosing a 510 plan, because they know that, okay, so it's either going to be used for qualified education expenses, or I have a backup that I can help give them a head start in saving for retirement. So that is one other thing that wasn't on the slides. They just want to talk about with the 510 plans that, a lot of parents are asking about these days.
Right, perfect. So I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so I think we can wrap. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope we answered some of your questions and you feel like you have a little bit more confidence going forward with funding education in the future.
Thank you for joining. And if you ever need any assistance, just give us a call.